Now, 8 events left before the cutoff for the World Match Play, which of course will be returning to the Winter Gardens after a year away. Next week is going to be a big one with half of those events taking place. Which players do you have your eye on the most?
Well, going from one Welshman to another, I've got to mention Johnny Clayton, the newly crowned Premier League champion, and we touched on it in our chat with Mark Webster last week. The next big event is the World Match Play, and as things stand, whether he's going to be a seed or he's going to be a Pro Tour qualifier, and a lot of the seeds will be hoping that he does jump into that top 16, and there's not much of a gap between him and Ian White. Johnny Clayton currently 17th, I think it's around £1,500, and you've got to remember as well that Johnny Clayton skipped the last Super Series in Germany. If he'd have gone to that, the form that he's been in this year, we'd probably be talking right now that he is a top 16 player, but he's got 8 events to push into that top 16 to be one of the seeds, and as I say, I think a lot of the seeded players will be hoping that he does push into that top 16, because drawing the Premier League champion in the first round of the World Match Play, not the ideal draw for a lot of players. Aside from that, though, it's weird because usually in the race to the World Match Play, we're seeing European Tour events, we're seeing Players' Championship events week in, week out. But for the last couple of years, last year, this year, there's been a lot of gaps between the events, and particularly this year, gaps between the Super Series, 6 weeks since the last one, the third one. So a lot of the players will know where they stand in the race to the World Match Play, but can't do anything about it until next week when the events get back up and running again. And the pressure is going to ramp up these next 2 Super Series to get into the field. We've got 8 players, I think, currently set to make their debuts, some of them more comfortable than others. You've got Devon Peterson, Damon Heta right at the top of that Pro Tour qualifier list, who you'd say that they're in Blackpool right now, they're booking their B&B for that. But there's other players a little bit further down. Ryan Searle currently in 16th, who is just in there, I think, just on countback at the moment from Darius Labanauskas. All these players pushing to get into the World Match Play for the first time. And there's some established names that are pushing to keep their runs of getting into it. Simon Whitlock, Adrian Lewis, who we didn't see in the last Super Series. What's he going to be like after having a longer break than most players? Raymond van Barneveld, we know he's had his health issues this year, but he's also had a lot of success on the hockey, winning a title, and he's still well within a shout of getting to Blackpool. Another player I've got to mention as well, Joe Cullen, the Pro Tour #1. The last time we saw him was that appearance at Bullseye when he won all that money for charity. We've not seen him play PDC darts for a little while. I'm interested to see if he's kept up his form as well.
Yeah, there's so much to play for, and it is so tight right now in that race, and that's where I want to start about who I most have my eyes on, because right now on countback, Ryan Searle's in that last spot, but there are 6 players within 1,000 pounds of him, including, as you mentioned, Stephen Bunting, also Jamie Hughes, who's been there the last couple of years, right there just outside. That's how tight it is right now. It's, there's always a competitive race, or almost always is a competitive race, especially as you get down to those last few events. But I can't recall there ever being a time where just a couple weeks out, there were 6 players this close. Granted, when there are fewer events, it will tend to be more compact, but even still, that's really tight. But there's a few players who aren't that far behind that. One of our guests, Adam Hunt's only a couple thousand pounds out of it. You mentioned Simon Whitlock, who hasn't failed to qualify since he made his first one over a decade ago. He's pulled himself to under 4,000 pounds behind Saul for that last spot. Raymond van Barneveld in his first year back as a tour card holder still in with a chance. If he makes a final, he'll be right back there. But there are other players who usually make it and have made it for a long time who are well adrift. Steve Beaton, over 8,000 pounds out of it. But you go back 4 years ago, this is about the position he was in mid-June 4 years ago. What did he do? He only went and won a Players' Championship event in Wigan and got himself into the World Match Play and started playing fantastic darts again. If anyone is going to do that, it's Steve Beaton. And I just want to see how he does for that reason, because, Dan Dawson will be great on commentary if he does it, and he does have more lives than a cat. Adrian Lewis, who you mentioned, Adrian Lewis could win a title. That still wouldn't get him in. That's how far he is adrift. In fact, just barely ahead of Aaron Beeney in the race. But beyond those players who are trying to get in, I really want to see how some of those players who we haven't seen in quite some time get on. You mentioned Joe Cullen. We haven't seen him in a while. He was playing great at the start of the year, missed out on the Premier League, hasn't kept going with those same heights, but now hopefully now that the Premier League's over and he's seen his good friend lift the title, will be go back to what he had seen. I'm also curious to see how those players who just played the Premier League get on. Jose de Sousa, most likely. I think he is on the verge, as I said a couple weeks ago, of just smashing everyone every time. He really looks like he is the best or one of the best players every single time he plays. I would not be surprised if he wins 2 titles this week. He doesn't need to. His ranking is fine. Although a couple titles would move into the top 10 for the first time. But I just want to see what he does because he's playing so well. You expect that he'll win 2 of these titles because that's just how good he's playing. And I'm really curious to see how he gets on.